I just started all these last week and they are all starting to pop up nicely, except my spinach is the only thing that hasn't quite germinated. So I don't know if I need to go back through and re-sow, maybe find some different seeds. But look at these little babies popping up. I've been spending so much time out here that I thought it was necessary that I buy more plants. So I went to a local nursery yesterday and I bought this one and hung up, and I've got my pothos, I think that's how you say this, hanging up in here. And I like brought them home yesterday and Nathan was like, "Did you buy more plants?" I was like, maybe. I don't know, just something about making this. Obviously I have all the things growing here, but when I'm spending so many like hours out here like working and seeding microgreens and up potting and things like that, I just like to create that space, you know. I like to feel homey when I'm out here, especially when I'm like putting in lots of hours. This is the sign of something not good. I came out here last night and I noticed that a lot of my starts were kind of laced. Now, I do see lots of bugs flying around in here. I was honestly really disappointed because we went ahead and like bought all the insect netting for whenever I move them outside to not deal, like usually all my fall and winter stuff like brassicas and things like that, they get those, you know, all my brassicas get like the cabbage worms, and I just have a hard time. So we agreed that this season we were going to set ourselves up for success, buy insect netting and just keep our plants covered as soon as I get them out. So knowing that like I wasn't going to have to deal with the bugs, and I come in here last night and I was like, wait a second, what is going on? So it's so frustrating. These are things that I've got the door right here. And like I go in and out of here all the time, just to like dump, you know, old microgreen trays in the compost, or the kids are coming in and out. So it doesn't really surprise me that these things have found their way in here. But man, that is frustrating. It kind of looks like a flea beetle, some sort of moth or something, I'm sure is what's happening. But at this point, I need to be moving my things outside. And the reason for that is brassicas like cabbage, broccoli, and cauliflower, they are going to take longer to establish as the days are shifting and the days are becoming shorter and there's less sunlight and things like that. It's just going to take them a bit longer to grow, which is completely normal with your fall and winter things. So I went ahead and up potted these the other day. But they're not thriving in here. Honestly, I think they've been under this light for just too long. I need to get them in the ground. I have been cautious on that because I've been worried that it's just still been too hot, and I don't want to put them out there and burn them. It is definitely something that happens on accident. So for instance, this right here was a beautiful rutabaga that got transplanted out, and it just ended up getting way too hot, and so it just killed it, as you can see. Now this one survived and is doing okay. That one back there, I'm gonna have to completely rip it out. It's just completely died. Now, of course, that wasn't my intentions, right? I didn't want to move them out here and they died. I knew I was going to take a gamble. They were really, really leggy in the pot that they were in. Rutabagas, typically, you should direct sow those. But I had really good success transplanting out my beets, and I thought I would just give it a go. Now I know it's probably a bad idea. But I feel like the hardening off process sometimes gets missed when moving your seedlings outside. Same for in the spring. If you're moving them out early and you end up having like a cold snap, which happened to us this year as well, and you're rushing around trying to cover your plants and all these things. So I really just wanted to talk about that. I need to get my plants in the ground because I know that they're going to take longer. The days are starting to shift and slow down and not as much sunlight. So I need them in the ground. But I also need to be mindful that if I move them in the ground right now and say sometime this week we have a mid-90s day, more than likely it's going to burn them because they're not used to the elements that are happening outside. what kind of gardener would I be if I didn't get distracted by these beautiful beans. Look at those, just coming on, so nice. So one of the first things you can do when hardening off your seedlings is you can move a fan into whatever type of grow setup you have going on. If it's in your house under grow lights, if you're in your greenhouse outside, that is completely fine. That's actually what I'm going to do. I've got a fan, a circulating fan in the greenhouse. I'm going to move that in there. My microgreens desperately need that airflow, and I'm going to get that hooked up, show you guys just kind of what it does, and I'm probably going to do that for a few days. My gosh, can you tell this greenhouse has not been used since the spring? Man, oh man, it is messy in here. So this is the fan I'm working with. You guys can see this was actually given to me by my father-in-law, and it worked really well. You can obviously have like a small fan. You could, even if you had like shelves like this, find a fan that just clipped on and just kind of rotated. That is completely fine. This is literally just the only fan that I had. But it is a really key important part in hardening off your plants to get them used to the elements. So I'm going to go hook this up and talk to you guys a bit more about that. Alright, so I got it hooked up, and as you can see, it is literally just creating wind. See how it's blowing these? I have it on the lowest setting. But what I'm trying to do is mock the elements in here that my starts are going to experience when I set them outside. Now, it's super important because, like I said, if I were to take this and put it outside right now, and it's been in this cozy environment with the perfect light, the perfect temperature, and I move it outside and it's in the high 80s or 90s, it's going to burn it. It is going to go through what we call a transplant shock. Now, sometimes your starts can recover from that. A lot of times, especially if they're smaller starts, they are not going to recover. They're going to die like that rutabaga did. It just completely burnt to a crisp. It was so shocked. Now, I kind of knew that was going to happen, and I had other rutabagas started, and I knew, well, I probably should just start these from seeds, but I don't recommend that. It was a total rookie mistake. I knew it was a mistake, and I did it anyway, so learn from my mistakes and don't do that. But by continuing to come out here and add wind and move them outside, which would be the next step, you are just hardening off this and preparing it to have the most success when you transplant it outside. Hey baby.
Hey Mama.
What are you doing?
Daddy's just doing nothing, so.
You're silly. It is always so much fun having your kids come out here. It's like when I'm deep in the middle of something and then they surprise you with all the things. It is worth just taking a moment to stop and enjoy this. So all of these small little starts, there's no way I could transplant these out. These are not big enough. They're not going to survive. These aren't even to the stage where you need to start hardening off yet. These are the stage that they're getting ready to go outside. I'm getting ready to need to plant them. They're not thriving in here under the light, under these conditions. As you can see, they're just, I mean, that leaf completely just fell off. They need to be outside. I should have started this process a while ago, but your plants will tell you what they need. Look for the signs. Listen to what your plants, you know, asking for, whether it be better soil, better light, to be moved outdoors, and let that kind of be your key, along with your timing on knowing when you need to start hardening off, when you need to start moving them outside. What I plan to do is have this fan in here for at least a few days. At least give it a few days where they are used to just this right here. They're used to the motion, especially with your small little starts like these I had showed you guys. It is super important to make sure that the stems in them, the stems right now on my starts, especially these that just are starting to pop up, are really brittle. I think that'd be a good way to put it. They're super brittle. They're not sturdy. They're not strong. So you just want to make sure you're doing all the things that your plants become resilient, that they can withstand high winds if that's something you're dealing with in your area. I'm just looking at all the signs of all my things. These look not good. This is cabbage. I just know that they're longing for something more. I need to start that hardening off process. What that looks like right now is starting with the fan in here all day. I'm gonna let this fan move in here all day long. And then once I do that for a few days, the beginning of next week, I'm gonna start moving them outside. I'm gonna take trays of these and I'm gonna be setting them. I'll show you guys the hardening off table that I have. You want to make sure that when you're moving your things outside, that you do it gradually. Make sure that you start in the morning when there's no sun, or later in the evening. Then once you do that, and then they go from the fan to real life conditions, maybe, you know, different things. Do not set them out in the middle of the day or on a hot day. You're absolutely going to burn your plants. So make sure it's something that you do early in the morning, later in the evening, and just for a few hours. So I'm going to just set them out for a few hours in the morning, bring them back in before the sun starts to come up in that area, and keep doing that for probably about a week or so. Oh, isn't that sweet? I had my father-in-law build me these tables, and they have been a game changer. I knew in my mind this was exactly what I wanted. He executed them really, really well. It works perfect. You guys know in the spring I am starting a lot of things. I've got hundreds and hundreds of tomatoes for my garden. I do a plant sale, the tunnels, all the things. So I really wanted a space. It was where I was moving stuff from the greenhouse, just small trays at a time on a picnic table. It was not a sustainable thing at all. This was pretty inexpensive to build, and I'm telling you right now, I love it. Having that certain like table and that space for hardening off makes a huge difference. Alright, so this is what it looks like. It has this really nice like cattle panel on here where the trays just slide. We also put up the PVC pipes on them, and the reason that we do this, so here's kind of a better view. The reason that we do that is because, you know, in the spring and stuff when I'm starting things, we still had those cold snaps, so I was able to drape plastic over these and not have to move my starts in and out of the greenhouse constantly. Just if there was some influx in the weather, I could just drape it with plastic, keep them safe and protected, and it worked out super, super well. So once they get done being acclimated by the fan, I'm going to move them out here. Right now, I don't know, it's probably about, thank you.
Welcome.
It's probably about 8 o'clock in the morning. This part right here does not get a lot of sun until around 11 or noon. So it's nice. It's a really good transition place. So I'm going to be moving these out here. All of my trays that are big enough, the small ones I'm going to let stay in there. I just started those last week, so they're just not at a place where they're ready to come out. It's just, they're not established enough to where they wouldn't experience, it wouldn't damage them. But my bigger ones that I've already up potted and things like that, that I'm getting ready to move outside, they're going to come out here. And they're going to come out here for a few hours every single day, and then I'm going to move them back in. And we're going to do that process for probably about a week. Once I've done that, then I'm going to start moving them closer to the garden to where they are getting a bit more sun. Not a lot of sun, not scorching hot day of the sun, but I know that it's shaded here until about 11. So what I'm going to do is around either leave them out here 11 to 12 maybe, to where it's that light sun, and continue to do that. And then eventually they're going to be outside longer in the sun, and then they're going to be fine. It's super, super important to harden off your plants because, like I said, one, you don't want to experience transplant shock. You've spent all this time, you monkey? You've spent all this time, you know, if you're starting your things from seeds, that you don't want to kill them. Like I don't have a plan B. I started just enough starts for my garden. I don't want to have to go to a nursery and buy these things. So for me, it's super important to make sure that I'm doing the necessary steps to where when I put that start in the garden, it's going to have been hardened off. It's not going to experience any transplant shock. I'm going to move it from its cell into the garden, and then it's just going to be able to thrive. Once you've done all those necessary things, you have slowly acclimated it to the weather, to the wind, to the sun, then you are absolutely ready to move those things into the garden, and you should not have any problem with transplant shock. Isn't that right? Mm-hmm. Do you have any advice on moving your plants out to the garden?
Mm-hmm.
What is something Mommy always tells you?
Remember,
if you talk to your plants, they'll grow.
If you talk to your plants, they'll grow.
Remember, Mommy always tells you that if you talk sweet to your plants, they'll grow.
And if you talk nice to your chickens, they'll lay more eggs.
There is your advice of the day. Having fallen victim to moving my plants out too early without doing this process and seeing how disheartening that is, having to go and buy starts, that's why I really just wanted to do this video. I know you guys are, you know, amping up, getting ready for fall and things like that, and you're probably moving things out into your garden. So this is just something that I want you to be mindful of. Make sure that you take the necessary steps to make sure that you're avoiding that transplant shock. You're avoiding killing your plants on accident. Now, if you're going to a local nursery or a farm store and you're buying these already established starts, you don't have to worry about that. They have been outside, they've already been hardened off and everything like that. So if you're going to any type of farm store, any type of nursery, you should be able to take those starts and immediately put them into your soil and they will completely thrive. As long as you're not like keeping them in a hot place, that you're not forgetting to water them. That's something I always recommend too when you're buying starts or even transplanting your own starts into the garden. Make sure that you're watering them really, really well. Make sure that you are transplanting them out either early in the morning or later in the evening. I prefer doing mine later in the evening because usually if you transplant them out in the day or in the early morning and then sometimes you have a hot day all of a sudden, that tends to be harder on the plant versus if you were to transplant them out at night. They have all night, all the next morning to get adjusted before it starts getting a bit hot. I love mornings. It's not even school time yet. And I just love her coming out here with me and just hanging out. It's like such a precious moment, you know? It's like you don't even realize how much you're pouring into your kids, or honestly, how much your kids are pouring into you. But it's like just having those sweet little moments, those sweet little talks with her early in the morning. Man, it gets me in a good mood. Oh man, so you see this one's like already laid over. That's telling me, one, this is super leggy plant, like super leggy. But that's telling me that maybe I need to, since my fan is on the lowest setting, maybe I just need to move it back more since these are kind of leggy and just not strong enough. That's why I think it's really, really important. Just take notes from what your plant is telling you. I know this is not good, this is not healthy. So I am actually just going to move the fan back a bit more, just to where it's not as harsh on these. Cannot wait to move these guys outside. These are all my kales. These have a bit longer. I just started these a couple weeks ago. This is some Encore lettuce. Yeah, these all need to get a bit bigger, but it won't be long before they'll be ready to go out. Alright, something else you guys can do. Say that you started your plants late and you're like, oh man, I couldn't get this variety at a nursery or a farm store. I really wanted to grow this particular spinach or broccoli or whatever it may be. And you think, I really need to get it in the ground and I didn't have time for this week and a half, 2 week, you know, hardening off process. What can I do? Do I just forfeit that crop? Absolutely not. This is something like I'm at that stage where I'm like, man, I probably should have started this hardening off process a week ago for some of my bigger ones, because I also am going to be succession sowing. I'm growing like 30 different cabbages, 30 different broccolis and kales. Well, some of those I want to space out to where I'm not harvesting 30 cabbages at one time and have, you know, like having to put them all up. So I'm wanting some of my more established ones to go out and then plant more later. That way I have a good succession on growing and I'm not super overwhelmed with the harvest. But what you can do is buy shade cloth. So we are intending, because we do have the pest pressure with our fall and winter crops, we have bought this steel kind of wire, and we're going to make hoops much like what you saw on the hardening off table in our beds, and we're going to lay down insect netting, and that is going to stay up on all of our stuff. We're going to do a video on that because I just think there's so much value if you are dealing with those types of pests, just to do the insect netting. It really just eliminates all of that. It is fantastic. So I am super pumped about that. But what you could also do, and it's a pretty inexpensive thing, like the wiring didn't cost hardly anything to make that, you can get shade cloth, or you may already have shade cloth, and you can move your babies outside, put them under shade cloth to where they're protected from the sun, they're protected from the harsh winds, and your plants are going to thrive. That is something that I heavily consider doing. I think that I'm okay. I think I'm still in that window, and I'm fully prepared to put plastic on those pipes or on that wire. That way if a frost does come, I can kind of protect them. So I feel okay. but you may be experiencing, man, I really need to get these starts out right now. Absolutely. Throw up some wire hoops, put some shade cloth on there, move them outside, and they are going to be okay, and you don't necessarily have to go through this entire process. So I just want to say that because I want to encourage you guys. You guys know, like, that is what I'm passionate about. Work with what you have. Figure out what is going to work best for you with your temperatures, with what you're growing. If you didn't have time to start seeds and do all this stuff, go find a local farmer. Go support your local farm store. There is a good chance that I'm going to sow some of these out and they may just flop and not do well, and that is just the part of it, you know, that you don't really like, but it happens. So I am fully prepared to have to go to my farm store and buy some already established starts if it comes to that. Plus, if you guys remember, I cannot grow Brussels sprouts worth a dang, and my husband just wants me to grow them so bad. So I tried in the spring. They took forever. I still feel like I may be a little late to the party, but Nathan asked me, he was like, hey, what do you think about going to the farm store and buying some Brussels sprouts? So we are going to be sourcing that out. We're going to be going to our farm store, buying good established starts that will just kind of jump off. So just be mindful of that. Like, there is no right or wrong way to grow food. Like, you are growing food. You're doing all the necessary things you need to do. We're all learning through the process, and I think that is the beauty. I know the first few times that I started growing food, I had no idea that transplant shock was a thing. I didn't know you were supposed to harden off your plants. And I killed a lot of things, and it was a really good learning experience. Like, all of those experiences just molded me, made me more mindful in the season of life that I'm in now. Like, oh, this is really important. You cannot just take your starts and put them in the soil and expect them to not experience something. Same with me. If I put myself out in those elements, I'm going to experience some things, and they're probably not going to be good depending on if I acclimated myself or not. So I just want this video to encourage you guys, if you are in this season, make sure that you are taking the necessary steps. That way that your plants are going to thrive. You're going to have a great fall garden. I can't wait to see what you guys are growing, how much joy it brings you guys through the fall and the winter. But I just wanted to throw some of these things out at you guys today. So thanks for hanging out with me. I'll talk to you soon.